You are live.
Welcome to the 17 July 2023 meeting of the Annapolis Transportation Board. And my thanks to Tom Schock for stepping in and running this thing last month when I was not able to attend. I was able to watch the video and picked up some of what happened, and I'll get to some of that later. Taylor has joined, and so I think we have a quorum, and that's good. Welcome. So our secretary is not with us, but may join later. In any event, it will be apparent from the screen who has attended. So I will consider the roll call having occurred. The agenda, Tom, would you tell me what the status of the agenda is? Did you approve last month's agenda at, I'm sorry, 2 months ago at the last meeting?
We approved the minutes. I don't think we did approve the agenda.
I'm sorry, the minutes. That's what I meant.
Oh, yes. Yep, we did.
Okay, so we are one behind at this point.
We just need the minutes from the June meeting,
Exactly.
approved. Yeah,
Exactly. And I do not have them, so we'll have to postpone that to the next meeting. Are there any modifications to the agenda as submitted that you'd like to have discussed? Hearing nothing, we will proceed with the agenda as distributed. Next item on the agenda is public participation, and there is none that I am aware of. The third item on the agenda is Alderwoman Karma O'Neill. And if you would bring us up to date on what's happening in the city with respect to transportation, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kurt. A couple of things going on. Last week, we had a transportation committee meeting. And in that meeting, we had a brief report, not directly from Bird, but through Eric Lushinsky on the Bird bikes, where we were shown the hotspots in the area as far as where most of the bikes and scooters are being picked up and dropped off. We just completed 1 year of the bikes and scooters. My number one question was how many accidents have occurred in that year, because a lot of the citizen complaints that I get are it's an accident waiting to happen, people driving recklessly, things like that. There have been no major reported accidents from the Bird bikes. There have been a few people hitting bumps and falling over, things like that. But according to the report last week, there have been no major reported accidents from the bikes and scooters. They will remain in operation. We have them contracted through the city, and the city does make a percentage off of those. I can't tell you what that percentage is because I don't know it, but we do make a small percentage off that contract every time somebody uses one of the bikes or scooters. One of the things that I asked was if the scooters and bikes could be equipped with a sticker that actually had a phone number that you could call if you were finding a bike or a scooter in a place that it shouldn't be, or if it'd been left for too long. I was told that there is a sticker on them. I searched a scooter the other day and couldn't find it. So we are working on that. But there is, and I will publish it later through social media and on, I'll send it to you all. There is an email, a direct email that we can send if you do find a bike or scooter in a place that it shouldn't be, or it's been there too long. I've been emailing directly with our contacts whenever I see one, and he's been really responsive as far as getting those out of the way pretty quickly. The Navy Stadium has asked that there be no bike drop-offs around the stadium path. So that's not a legal place to drop off bikes and scooters, especially during games. It'll start back up in August because they don't want them in the way of the Navy games being there for people trying to access the place, the stadium.
Bird hasn't geofenced the stadium, have they?
They haven't geofenced it completely. It will be outside of the walking path, where it will be, they won't be able to go inside the walking path for the bikes to still be working, and they won't be able to drop them inside the walking path area. So if somebody's coming from downtown on a bike or scooter coming to the game, they can drop it pretty much between Cedar Park and the walking path, or Taylor and the walking path in those areas, but not taking it into the stadium further than the walking path. And that was asked for by Bill Givens and Chet Gladchuk from the Naval Academy. So for the safety of visitors, people aren't riding bikes around the stadium. If you guys have any questions on that, let me know. We did talk about, today was the last day that the Annapolis Go on-demand transportation was happening. It ends today. And I believe that Kwaku is on the call tonight to talk about the city's pilot plan. So I'm going to let him talk about that later. But I am very excited. Transportation came to last week's committee meeting and talked about, how that's possibly going to work. And I think it's going to be a great option for city residents. I'm sad that there's going to be basically a 2-month break in the service, but that's the way it has to happen in order for us to completely bid it out and work out all the details to get it up and rolling. And lastly, I urge everyone to try to attend one of the comprehensive plan public outreach. I've been publishing it, and I'll add it to the chat if I can. Later on in today's.
Actually, chat is disabled for public meetings.
Okay, then I'll send it to everybody's email address. A copy of the flyer again tomorrow night, Tuesday at 6 p.m. There's one of the comprehensive plan discussions happening at the West Street Library. Eric Lushinsky will be on hand. It's a workshop format where people can come in, take a look at different parts of the plan, and then ask questions. So it's not a formal presentation. It's more question and answers. There'll be a very short presentation about some of the highlights of the plan. And transportation is a big part of that, both on the water transportation, bikes, and walking paths, as well as hopefully sidewalks in that plan. I think that I mentioned this at the May meeting, but if I didn't, in the FY24 budget, Ward 2 was awarded 3 different areas of studies for sidewalks, one on Cedar Park from Taylor Avenue to Farragut, one on Farragut from Cedar Park to Rowell Boulevard, and then we will be installing pedestrian activated crosswalks at the corner of Cedar Park and Windell, and the corner of Cedar Park and Sumner. Those crosswalks that you push the button and they start flashing so that people can walk safely across, and it's alerting drivers to stop and let them go through. There are several other areas in the city that we're working on extending sidewalks. And I know that in Ward 7 they are. And in Ward 4, they are looking at sidewalks, extended sidewalks along the Forest Drive corridor. So those are all have made it into the CIP, and hopefully will be projects that we're seeing in the next 8 to 14 months. And I think that is all I have. Oh, one more thing. Before the city council, I believe at the July 24th meeting, if it's not at the July 24th meeting, it'll be the first meeting in September, will be the resolution to support the House bill that talks about riding bicycles on sidewalks. It's a resolution by the city just to concur with that. We do have in our city code that ability, but as this board or this commission had requested, the city council is definitely making that a resolution in hopes that the state will follow. In talking with our council, Cynthia Reuter, she believes that the state is sort of letting cities and towns make their own rules as far as that goes, instead of making an overlapping state rule, unfortunately.
Well, the situation is they have made a state rule, and we're trying to reverse it. There has been, by the way, I really thank you for pushing that resolution. That will be very helpful. It's the change in law has received nothing but support in the legislature. And the only problem is that one house of the legislature, the Senate, has never taken it up. They always find other business standing in the way, usually business which has large dollar signs associated with it. And since this has no dollar signs associated with it whatsoever, it's a change in policy. They just don't seem to get around it. But the resolution will be enormously helpful in energizing Sarah Elfreth to cause the Senate to vote. I mean, I'm happy for a vote. I'm fairly confident it will be a yay vote, but the fact that they never get to vote at all is very concerning.
Right. Oh, and the last thing, and I promise this will be the last, I've said that 3 times now. The last is in reviewing the request by this commission for signage and fees associated with people parking in EV charging stations. In the city code, there are fees associated with parking in, illegally parking in a EV charging station. And those signs are actually being created by Department of Public Works and should be going up within the next 2 weeks. It's a $100 fine if you're found to be parking and not utilizing an EV charging station. So those will be posted.
That's great. Is it very clear that it's not only occupying the space, but occupying the space and not charging that will be covered?
Correct. Yes. So if it's a non-electric vehicle occupying the space, that's definitely it. I believe that they are talking about putting a time limit, a number of hours, 2 to 4 hours time limit. Like if you've been in there for longer than that and not charging as an EV, there's also a fine.
Right. Yeah, I'm most concerned about those vehicles who, well, the highest concern is an ICE vehicle not charging at all. The next level of concern is an electric charging vehicle which has reached its limit and is no longer charging. And then finally, I'm less concerned about the number of hours that a vehicle may be charging than I am with the other 2 things. But I can understand why, if we really have a resource scarcity, then perhaps a time limit will be necessary at some point.
Great. That's all I
I
have.
have a question. Hi.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Karma. I'm just curious, in that situation, like in front of the Department of Natural Resources, who pays for that electricity?
It is paid by the customer. It's charged at a rate of about 17 cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay, so they put a credit card in or something like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
And Karma, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
On the electric bikes, I'm glad to hear the city gets a cut. Is it a cut off the top, or is it a cut after profitability has been reached? Is the system in fact profitable to the operator?
It is profitable. I don't know what our cut is and where our cut comes in, but I believe that it's a percentage of bike usage.
So it's a gross rather than net. That's simple to calculate and difficult to game. That's great.
Yes, and I do know that there are several possibilities for how much you pay. They do offer a low income rate, they offer senior rates. So depending on how you sign up and who's signing up, there are different rates of service. So I think it's a percentage off of whatever the total is.
Okay. And then finally, I had an interesting conversation with Marcus Moore about Annapolis Go and its possible rebirth. He, and I guess I also am concerned about the cost. It's costly, and I think the transportation board ought to take a look at things, a measure of utility versus cost. How many people will this be serving, at what cost, and how does it compare to all of the other investment options that are before the city? The first cut at this is that with respect to fare free transit, for example, this is markedly more expensive. But if it is, it really depends on how many customers are being served for the price that's paid. And we should try to run the numbers and come back with recommendations at a future time.
Great.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, next, Marcus said he was going to join us. Kwaku is here. If you could summarize concisely what the possibilities for extension of Annapolis Go are, that would be nice. Kwaku, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay. All right. Let me start with the micro transit. My name is Kwaku with the City of Annapolis Transportation Department. The micro transit is a project which all the material actually did make budget amendment about 2 years ago to have a pilot micro transit. At that time, VIA was coming under the parking arrangement. So the city manager suggested that we wait for VIA projects to be over or to get close to the end before we start. So we have kicked, the micro transit project is now underway. We did receive 7 technical proposals. The department, together with the County Office of Transportation, did review the 7 proposals. And the cost.
Kwaku, just how was that funded, by the city or from
by the
other
city?
parties?
It's 100% funded by the city.
And what's the cost of that?
The budget amount is 90,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have 7 proposals. We did complete review of those proposals and have created a short list of the top 4 that the procurement officer will invite for a presentation. So we did meet with the procurement officer last Friday to develop a run-out schedule, which he is actually fine-tuning it. So once that is finished, we will let you know the various remaining taxes so far as the micro transit project is concerned. The presentation will occur sometime early August. And based upon that, we will select a final vendor. As you may recall, the micro transit project is supposed to replace the orange route. However, in the RFP, we did indicate that we would like to include the purple route, which is the evening service, because currently that is about 75 minutes wait. We believe that with a micro transit, that will be very, very short.
Now,
the micro transit
can I ask for a clarification? The $90,000 being fronted by the city, is that an operational cost or a cost for a study with larger operational costs to follow?
No, it's just the pilot. So basically, it's the cost of the software. We will be using our own buses and our own drivers. So it's the cost of the software and the design and then the implementation of the project. So that is the $90,000 for. We are
What-
not
so-
buying.
So the total cost is significantly higher than that because that doesn't cover the buses and drivers, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The money is essentially for the software.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
planning and software. It's really not operational. That's on top of it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It says the software only. They call it the service transportation as a service. So that is what we are looking at this time. So that's for the micro transit. The next thing is about the charging infrastructure, which is also fully funded by the city. There is no state or federal funds. It was part of the FY 2024 CIP. So we did meet with the project engineer today to actually develop a schedule and what we need to do with regards to the specifications in the RFP that will be coming very soon.
Now, again, for clarification, the charging infrastructure is to serve what? Microtransit or the new electric buses?
Okay, I thought that you are aware that the city has actually placed order for 2 electric buses. That was last year. It was funded mostly by the state, FTA. The county also gave us some money, and the city also put in some money. So we did place an order for 2 electric buses and 1 charger. So in anticipation of the arrival of those buses in the next 12 to 18 months, we need to get the charging infrastructure ready. Right. So that is why we are talking about it right now. Again, we don't have any federal or state funds for that. It's fully funded by the city. So that is the charging infrastructure, which is found in the 2024 CIP.
Okay.
In fact, that takes me to the next item, which is the electric bus. We did get money to buy 2 electric buses. As I said earlier, mostly federal and state funds. The county gave us some money towards the 100% mobility plan, and the city also added some money to it to fund the procurement of 2 30-foot electric buses and 1 charger with 2 dispensers. So on the electric front, this is what we have. In summary, the micro transit project is underway. The charging infrastructure, we are in the process of developing the RFP for that. And the electric bus, we did place an order for 2 electric buses sometime last year with a delivery days. I think the delivery time is between 12 and 18 months. So we are working hard to get the charging infrastructure in place to be able to do the charging once the buses arrive. So that's all that I have. I don't know if you have any other questions for me.
Great, thank you. Well, Karma suggested you were going to have a few words to say on the Annapolis Go resurrection.
I thought that I did hear you saying that you had a conversation with Marcus.
I did, but the rest of the board has not heard that.
Okay, because Annapolis Go have not been involved in the past few months. Marcus has been attending a meeting, so I will reach out to him to get a kind of a brief and then send it to you.
Okay, great.
But I know that the contract has ended. They will be leaving very soon, and that's why there will be a gap between the time that they leave and the time that we actually implement our micro transit project.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
And as you may know, it was funded not by the city. It was part of the garage project cost.
Yeah, I know, but that's for the future. We can't count on that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Next item is board membership. Let me summarize where we are. It appears that wards 4 and 7 are still unoccupied with a representative, and we have 2 at-large vacancies. Again, I'd like to welcome Edward Bergman, who is here tonight with us. There's one final formality in his appointment, and that is his appearance before the mayor to take the normal oath of office, and And that's the only thing standing in the way of his casting a vote. But as far as I'm concerned, he is fully with us. Would you like to say anything? You're muted.
Okay, I am now unmuted.
Mhm.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. I'm learning fast, but I don't have much to add yet. Thanks.
Okay, well, we're waiting in anticipation. Thanks, welcome again.
Thank you.
I know of one application which is pending with the mayor. If any of you know of people who have an interest, let me say that we have a liberating provision in the formal ordinance which created the Annapolis Transportation Board. If a seat designated for representation by a ward member is occupied more than a certain period of time, and we have long exceeded that period of time, we can forget about the wards and assign an occupant from anywhere in the city. So we are at liberty to appoint good people wherever they reside. And I encourage you to let me know of anybody you think that would be a productive member of the Transportation Board. Okay, that's board membership. Next is reports, and they are only in two areas, bicycles. Alderwoman O'Neill already gave us the status of our proposed resolution for the city to adopt, encouraging the Senate of the state legislature to finally get around to voting on this thing the next time around. It has passed the House of Delegates twice and has not failed the Senate, but it has failed to be considered by the Senate because of other business which stood in the way. That would be very helpful, I think. Sarah Elfreth hasn't really helped on this so far, and I hope that she will step in and kick it up one notch in her priorities. We also, I watched the video from your last meeting that I did not attend, and John Giannetti had made a proposal that the Transportation Board go on record as favoring a provision in any new Bay Crossing Bridge which is constructed that would include a bicycle/pedestrian path, something I hardly agree with, and which has been spoken in favor of by a number of other organizations. I asked him, I guess, 3 times to draft a resolution for us to consider, and I have heard nothing from him, and he's not attending tonight's meeting. So if he doesn't do it, I'll get around to do it. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say on that subject? No. Okay. Electric vehicles, Tom already told you at the last meeting of the instant response the Department of Natural Resources made to my suggestion. I wrote a letter to the head of DNR, asking him to examine the policy, and he said, yeah, it makes no sense for DNR to park its vehicles blocking the public access to the 2 public charging stations that they have there. And so they have stopped parking in front of those stations. They're open for public use again. I've never had so quick a reaction from a government agency in my life. It was literally overnight, and so it was quite gratifying. Tom, do you have anything else on electric vehicles?
I don't have anything to add this month.
Yeah. We all enjoyed the opening of the Hillman Garage, a nice ceremony. I walked down to the basement and checked out the EV charging stations. Haven't tried to use them myself, and I don't know how usable they are or if they're operating at all. I do notice that virtually every public charging station is incompatible with the electric vehicle, which exists in larger numbers than any other, and that's Tesla. It's a little odd. And the ground is shifting very quickly. Basically, in the last few weeks, every United States automobile manufacturer has committed to convert to the Tesla plug standard, and we'll be doing so over the next year or two. And so it's important that all of the city facilities be converted to what is the new North American charging standard. It's an interesting development. It really, there are probably 4 different charging standards that exist in the United States right now, a source of great confusion and expense. And it will be nice to settle on one that serves all. All right, let's move to new business. Anything is fair game at this point, and let's cover new business by just going around person by person. Tara is not here. Taylor is.
No new business from me.
All right. Beth is not here. Tom is.
Yeah, I don't have anything for this month.
All right. John Giannetti is not here. Charles Brooks is not here. David DeQuinzio.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Just if you didn't see this in the news, I would encourage everyone to be aware that the U.S. House Transportation Committee has voted out of committee a proposal to dramatically cut Amtrak funding, which is possibly an effort just to stab Joe Biden. It's not a very serious proposal, and it's important for the region, of course, for Amtrak to keep growing, and where the infrastructure law, something that's not all that well understood, provides several approximately $66 billion of capital that would allow the organization to buy more rolling stock and upgrade infrastructure, but that money can't be used for operations. And so the company is still dependent upon operating money to be appropriated by Congress every year, which for other modes, Congress always manages to appropriate money. We're approaching, if not already over, $400 billion of general funds, meaning money that did not come from users of roads, into the Highway Trust Fund without ever, without much reporting, without much controversy. And so, and one of the beliefs that is common in our area and up and down the Northeast is that, well, if Amtrak just got rid of the to quote, money-losing long-distance trains, then the quote-unquote profitable Northeast corridor would be fine. This is factually and demonstrably untrue for a variety of reasons. Loss of the national network would take away any reason any member of Congress from the middle of the nation or any places served by that network. They would have no incentive to vote for any funds, and the Northeast will be left on its own to fund the capital requirements for the corridor, which Amtrak owns. So if any of you are in any kind of regular communication with our member of Congress, Mr. Sarbanes, or either of our senators, I would appreciate getting word to them that this proposed House committee budget for Amtrak is not accessible, and that we should support the long distance network, even if we don't ride it, because if the long distance network goes away, then everything else goes away as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a development. You said the road subsidy is about 400 billion. What was the size of the cut to Amtrak again?
It's approximately 70% cut. And that number
which is
approaching
Tony? 400
billion, it's interesting. Because the federal gasoline tax has been kept at 18.4 cents
So it's less and
since
less important.
1993. Well, inflation has eroded that number. And it's interesting in these so-called divided times that one thing both parties seem to be in rock solid agreement on is to not raise the federal gas tax. Political right doesn't like it because it's a tax, and the political left doesn't like it because it's regressive and it falls hard on people of modest means who need to get to work. So the trend is continuing, whereby you and I as Americans have never had as many lane miles of road available to us, while at the same time never being asked to pay for so little until now, and it's continuing. Out of our gas taxes, vehicle license and registration fees and tolls in order to use those lane miles. So that dividing line between user money going to roads at the federal level and general funds, retirees who are in assisted living facilities and not driving anymore, they're paying taxes. Kids who don't have cars yet and are working summer jobs and paying federal taxes, they're not drivers yet. Yet their tax revenue, their taxes are going into are in this pot of money that is going into roads. So by having held the federal gas tax at 18.4 cents since 93, at that time, the Federal Highway Trust Fund had a surplus. That surplus was exhausted in 2005, and that was the first year that Congress began shoveling money into it. Usually in the last couple of days before the deadline, and it's slipped into the appropriation process with very little publicity. Maybe if you watch C-SPAN at 2 a.m, you might actually see a comment or two about it, but it's done very quietly. And so it's that number that keeps climbing. And so now the dividing line between what users pay versus what everyone else pays is now slipping below 50%. In other words, half of what goes to roads doesn't come from users. And yet that is not called a subsidy. Some of you have heard me complain about this before, that should be called a subsidy.
Yeah. Well, my personal view is that the way to equity is not through subsidized energy, but through rather more direct means. But that's something the Congress so far does not agree with. So that 70% reduction amounts to what in billions of dollars? For
About 800.
800 billion?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. 800 million.
800 million. So it's 800 million that they're unwilling to spend, but 400 billion is fine.
Right, but it's not quite apples to apples, because the 800 is the operating support that Amtrak needs has been about $1 billion to 1.2 each year. So the 400 billion is an aggregate of money has gone into the Highway Trust Fund, not from users, since the trust fund went insolvent in 2005.
Exactly.
So that's 18 years.
Yeah.
Still, it's a lot of money.
I agree with your preliminary assessment that it's designed to be a stick in the eye of the president, and with any luck, the Senate will turn that around.
That's the view, but it's important that that our members of Congress hear from us on it.
Thank you so much,
Thank
David.
you.
Thoughtful as always. Carol Kelly is listed here, but she's no longer a member. Vince is not here tonight. Zoe?
I don't have any new business.
All right. Now we know your email address. That's a step forward. Edward?
I think I have only a question, and that's probably a naive one, but it's prompted by a friend who lives in Northwest DC. And he claims that city ordinance prohibits the use of an extension cord to an EV in the street. Is that the case in Annapolis? Not the case. Good, then I'm not breaking the law.
Oh, you're one of those people who must do that in order to.
I don't have to. It's just more convenient.
Yeah. It's yeah, this is one of the infrastructure problems that needs to be addressed one way or the other. And it's hopeful that we can find some cost-effective way around it, because it's going to be a permanent growing problem until we solve it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, the last is me, and the only thing I have to remark on is that I've seen a lot. I have no personal experience, and if any of you can chime in, let me know. But I understand that the practicalities of using the 2-hour free parking in Hillman are difficult. There is a code that's difficult to enter, works in some applications and not in others, and I've heard grumblings about this. Do any of you have personal experience on getting the 2 hours of free parking, which is available to city residents in the new Hillman garage?
Kurt, I signed up to get the free 2-hour code, and it took maybe 3 weeks or so to get an email back. But the email was a little bit confusing. I haven't attempted to try and use it yet, but I definitely need to find where the email is and go down there and figure it out. It does sound like you get the same code for your entire household. And I'm assuming it will work. I just haven't tried it out, but I know that some people hadn't heard back that had emailed in a request or submitted a request online. There was concerns that, and I think it sounds like, and Karma had sort of urged people to check back in, and I did eventually get an email. And I have my fingers crossed it's easy to use. That's all the input I have.
You and I are at exactly the same place. I also have a code, but have not attempted to use it yet. But I have communicated with a number of people who grumble over it's.
And there's one more thing. I think that the vouchers still work at some of the other garages.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch that. I'm a little. It seems like a software problem. It seems to me that once the code is issued, and it is issued in conjunction with a license plate number, it ought to be possible for their software to say, oh, I know that license plate number. It has 2 hours of free parking with no further necessity for the driver to do anything. I'd like to know if there's any technical reason why that couldn't be done.
I think the technical reason right now is that they're scrambling to get everybody in line and signed up. The parking, premium parking, actually didn't foresee the fact that residents in zones 1 and 2, which is the majority of downtown residents, would also be scrambling to get their yearly passes at the same time that the garage was opening. And I think it overwhelmed their system and their employees. They didn't have enough employees to be able to answer the demand of all the people trying to get not only their yearly passes, but then the 2-hour free passes. So that is part of the delay. I know from talking with other parking, meaning the parking people that take care of West Annapolis, that the software is out there. There's a lot of things that they can do. They can actually be offering that. And we are urging Premium Parking to move ahead and work on those things. The city council is, because they're not helping the situation, unfortunately. Premium Parking was hired and contracted by the folks that we have the private-public partnership with to build the garage. The city unfortunately didn't have a lot of say in who they hired to do the parking downtown. And so we're struggling for them to catch up.
Yeah, I can it's certainly reasonable that there would be startup pains for administration. What I'm somewhat unsympathetic about is that they have not changed their software so as to recognize the license plate without a necessity for the second time of entering a code. That seems like a fairly trivial software adjustment. And I encourage you to continue to encourage them to change their system.
We're trying to do the hard press on them because it has been such an uproar of, teeny tiny little issues that they're just not addressing. And there's nobody you can speak to on the phone, which is frustrating to folks. And, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack to try to get to an answer for some of these questions that really should be super easy. I know that Beth Dozel, while she's not here, she's come to several transportation committee meetings to discuss that when we've had the parking people on site. And they're telling us they're working on it. So we will hope to see some.
I have an
advancement.
incentives question. When a city resident uses his 2-hour entitlement in the Hillman garage, does the city actually remit dollars to the garage operator?
It's just dollars that we don't make towards that payment that is made.
If that is the case, then the contractor, I don't know whether we call him a contractor or not, but the operator of the garage has every incentive to drag their feet, because every dollar which is not used as the 2-hour entitlement is a dollar they do not collect. So there's an incentives problem there. You might keep your eye on that. They have an incentive to drag their feet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's the only item I had. Is there anything else that folks would like to bring up before we adjourn? Thank you so much for participating all. And one final thing. It is customary for boards and commissions not to meet during the month of August. And I would like to continue that custom unless there's overwhelming demand that we meet during August. Are there any objections to following that custom? All right, we are in abeyance until September, which I believe is September 18th. And I wish you all a good rest of the summer. We'll meet in September. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And I'm in favor. Anybody else? Thanks so much, everybody.